we're still a baby organisation, and I was the co-founder of Liga Mahasiswa Malaysia.
Very loud baby.
Yeah, because we were given rights to vote 18 years old. Then how can you give us the right to vote when you don't trust us enough to hold an academic discussion? We have always believed that the education is a right and not a privilege. What we want is university to not be just a preparation for students to be a worker. It should be a compound that celebrate ideas, increase the student autonomy. Campus life should be something more than just what we have right now. In the next 5 years, the student actually understand their power, and the culture of student activism will bloom once again in Malaysia. That is how we're trying to going into that direction.
Welcome back to another episode of Life Confessions, and as usual, we bring amazing guests in to join us and share their opinions, their views, and their life. With us today is the National Coordinator of Liga Mahasiswa Malaysia, Alyaah, Hani, Anuar. Thanks for joining us, Hani.
No problem. Thank you for inviting me. Appreciate it.
We have so much to ask you and so much to learn about you and what you've been going through. Let's start with how did you first become involved in student activism, and what motivated you to take on this leadership role in Liga Mahasiswa?
Yeah, this question recalled me back to 5 years ago when I was in Form 5 actually. I started student activism by joining Dewan Undangan Negeri Belia in Kedah.
Okay.
And starting from that, my activism is more on parliamentary sitting, like youth parliamentary sitting. So I have also joined Parlimen Wanita Muda Malaysia, Dewan Muda Malaysia, and a few others more. But when I started getting into University Malaya, by default context, I'm a upcoming final year law student in university. Thank you so much. So when I get into university, I thought of slowing down my activism, but because of the issues inside as well, it makes me wanting to be involved again in student activism, but on a different spectrum, on a different way of involving in student activism, whereby we or I get in touch with more on the grassroots student issues, and that motivates me to pursue student activism. Because previously my activism is more on women activism, youth activism. It's more on that. But now that I am in university, my focus shifted to student activism. And how did I ended up become the national coordinator? For context, once again, Liga Mahasiswa actually started just January this year.
Right.
Yeah, so we're still a baby organisation. And I was the co-founder of Liga Mahasiswa Malaysia because
Very loud baby.
yeah, so basically the context in University Malaya for student activism, we only have student political fronts that is contesting in in campus election. But we don't have a group of student that is non-partisan, that is not participating in the campus election. And I for sure is not interested in campus election. That's a lot of work. So I have decided with my friends who share the same interests to start a new community of students, and we collect student activists inside the university. So now we're happy to say that in January, we started with University Malaya. But now we have 4 to 5 other Liga Mahasiswa branches in University Science Malaysia, in University Sultan Zainal Abidin, in University Technology Malaysia. So we're still branching out actively now. So hopefully by the end of the year or next year, we have more of our branches.
Has the growth, the speed of growth surprised you?
Actually, yes. We are very surprised on how there are students who want to participate in student activism, but they don't have the platform, or they often avoid any platform that is affiliated to real political parties. So we're happy to provide a platform for them as well.
You're like a true independent.
Yep.
Okay. As president of Liga Mahasiswa, what do you see as your primary mission, and how have these or those goals evolved since you assumed the position?
Yeah, so basically, technically, I am the first national coordinator, so I get the privilege to sort of draft and craft where does this movement goes, but then that's a lot of responsibility as well. But we have 3 principles. Our principles are threefold. First is student autonomy. Second is intellectualism. And the third is social justice. So technically, we want to encourage students to involve more in intellectual discourse, inside the campus and outside of the campus, we want students to be aware of the national issues and fight for social justice, because we often believe that now the status quo is students is detached with grassroots. Student is detached with community, especially marginalized community. And we want to integrate back student with the community.
Right.
But this has been, based on history, student activists has always been the voices of the marginalized community. But because perhaps due to COVID, based on our discussion and observation, there's a lack in student being vocal. So we're trying to bring that back again. Yeah, and for student autonomy, we have seen that, of course, maybe we can discuss this later on. We have an act, which is the AUKU Act.
Yeah, the Universities and University Colleges Act. Okay.
And historically, this AUKU has been affecting student activism a lot.
Right.
Despite there's a lot of amendments, still the spirit of AUKU that is supposed to dissent student voices are still lingering around the students today, whereby most and majority of the students are afraid to talk about anything they claim to be political, perhaps because of the repercussions they might face. Yeah.
So there are opinions that are being stifled, you think?
Yep.
Because of this. And that's where you come in, Liga Mahasiswa comes in to hopefully find a way to
challenge the status quo.
Right. You are so passionate about what you speak about and what you stand for, right? Just for clarity, what degree are you pursuing currently?
I'm currently a law student.
Right.
An upcoming final year. I'm currently doing my legal internship right now.
How are you finding the time?
Managing through.
Yeah. Organizing on-campus events involves navigating the Peaceful Assembly Act. What is your approach to planning and executing gatherings in compliance with relevant regulations? How do you make it happen?
The situation is that students are unclear on what regulations we must follow inside the universities. If the regulation is that we have to send the proposal and it got approved and then we can do it, there are a few examples of students that got their proposals approved but then got cancelled by the administration last minute. So we sort of question that. And from Liga's side, we want to challenge the status quo because we believe that there is no need for such a strict regulation if you want to do just a academic discussion or academic forum, whereby we believe that every part of the university compound should be filled with different ideas, different discussions. So there's the first time we did a discussion, we gathered a few students, I think around 20 to 30 students. We just want to talk about the current going national issue. So there's a lot of confusion on what we can and cannot do because we're not doing anything that is harming the university or affecting the public peace of the university. And back to the Peaceful Assembly Act, there's a situation that we are informed that we must notify the admin before we can do any gathering. So now a question arises. If we want to just lepak with our friend, must we also notify the admin?
Yeah.
There's a bit of confusion and,
Yeah, where's the line?
Yeah, where's the line?
Yeah.
And previously, when we look back of the history of University Malaya, there's a speaker's corner initiated by the student, whereby the students can voice or do public speaking on any issues they feel like sharing with other students.
Right.
But now the culture has died.
Okay.
We want to bring that in. So there's a confusion between the regulations and the execution.
Right.
But if we believe that AUKU should have been aligned with the Principal Act. For now, Malaysia has Peaceful Assembly Act 2012. And it has required that the criminalization of sending a notice is now no more of that. So we believe that AUKU should have followed the recent amendment of
Peaceful Assembly Act.
Yeah.
Okay.
So we believe there is no need for us to submit a notice, especially the actual reason for a notice is so that police could facilitate our peaceful assembly.
Right.
But how come that they have the jurisdiction to disperse us, especially when the reasons provided to us is unacceptable?
Right.
So that's the situation with Peaceful
Especially
Assembly Act.
after approval has already been granted in some
Yes.
cases, right? In your opinion, what role does freedom of expression play in fostering critical debate on campus, and how can institutions safeguard open discourse while still maintaining a respectful learning environment? That's kind of like a fine line and a balance, but it depends on who you speak to. So in your opinion, what is that?
That is when we touch on academic freedom. Academic freedom is whereby every discussion on anything should be celebrated, especially inside university compound. And we believe that the student knows the limitation on what they can say or what they cannot say. We believe that now, with dissent and suppression coming, it is sort of disrespecting the students because we're not high school kids anymore. We know what to talk and when to stop. So technically, it's very important for a student to, our opinion should be celebrated, because inside university now, we are being treated as only the stakeholders, not the co-owners of education, while that should actually be the case.
Right.
And now we have talked to other student activists from different universities, and they face even more sort of repression from the administration.
Right.
So this is when we question what kind, of university culture that we want to practice in Malaysia. Because if we look at the outside country, there's a lot of demonstration going on even inside the university when there's something, they can go against with. But this culture is not being practiced in Malaysia.
Yeah.
There's very rare of student protests inside the university.
So in your opinion, it would seem that the ability to have the freedom of any sort of discourse on campus is should be allowed, and students themselves would be able to self-regulate if they are going too far in any particular topic of discussion.
Yeah, definitely. Because we were given rights to vote 18 years old.
Right.
Then how can you give us the right to vote when you don't trust us enough to hold an academic discussion?
Yeah.
So that is something very irony, and we always question that on why do you always being so restrictive towards our discourse?
You make a good point, because how can you vote if you don't have the chance to speak about the issues that you will be voting on? Yeah, makes sense. How does Liga Mahasiswa view the current mix of public funding and private contributions from Malaysian universities? And what, in your opinion, are the alternative financing models do you think that could better serve both the institutions and the students as well? Is there an alternative?
Yeah. We have noticed that the universities is leaning towards more privatization, and that is very worrying because there will be a lot of students, especially coming from B40 or the underprivileged students, will get affected by it. We, on part of Liga Mahasiswa Malaysia, is actually currently working on a campaign. It's actually a free education campaign, and this is not something new because this has been long proposed before, even by the previous political fronts. But we're questioning why there is no progress on this. Why is there no blueprint on this?
Right.
We are not asking for an immediate free education to all students.
Right.
We know that realistically that there should be different stages, but there must be a progress moving
a
towards
plan.
that idea. But now we have seen little to none of the government trying to work on that. So we're trying to bring that up, bring that as a national conversation so people talk about it.
Yeah.
And we need to fight for it because contextually, for political spectrum student movement inside Malaysia, they are very less progressive sides. Most of student movements are on the conservative sides, and most of student movements are funded by the political parties. So it's very hard for you to have a genuine student movement who talk only for the benefit of students.
Right.
There must always be for political party, their political party
There's an
interests as
agenda.
well. Yeah, but although that is something that we should not restrict, but
Right.
that is very sad because I have always hold this belief that the students should be independent from being controlled by any entity. So those are the things that when we gather, Liga Mahasiswa Malaysia not only gathered with student movements from different background, economy background, because I cannot say for sure from economic backgrounds because I don't have the knowledge on that. But when we're fighting for free education, it for sure impacts the economy and financial status of the country. So we bring students with that background and students from different backgrounds, as well as international students from a student movement from Indonesia.
Okay.
We sit down together and talk on how and what can we propose to the government. So what I'm saying now is that the student movements is not just being vocal without data and without being prepared. We are always prepared, and we have always wanted the authority to invite us over so that they can listen to our voice.
Right.
But the issue is that our voice is being, suppressed. So that is something that we are fighting as well right now in
Right.
Liga.
It's interesting that you say that because we were checking on some statistics, and only 14 to 19% of Malaysian workers have entered higher education. And so you actually and Liga Mahasiswa are championing for B40s, rural and other underserved students to access higher education. Aside from free education, is there anything else that you think would help?
Yeah, I think that we need to decentralize university, not just in the city.
All right.
Not many also go to university because they don't have the access to come to the university. For example, University Malaya, we're in the center of KL. And the cost of living for University Malaya students is very high. And we must admit that, of course, we are very privileged to have gotten the access to University Malaya. But there are also other universities that are also, the cost of living are very high. So we totally understand on why there are a lot of, young people not being able to afford universities.
Right.
And this is also when we trying to, propose to the government to make education more accessible, because we have always believed that the education is a right and not a privilege.
So location is just one basic thing as well.
Yeah.
When you're too far away, whether that be making sure that more universities are built in more places that are considered rural, or whether we are willing to supplement the students so that they are able to afford going to study. So it's not just making education free, but maybe paying for the education.
Yeah, and if
as
I
well.
may add, the amount of fee that we're paying now is not proportionate to the infrastructure that we can get.
Interesting.
We pay such a high amount of fee. For example, University Malaysia Sabah, they pay fee as like any other university, but they don't get the access to constant water supplies. And that is very frustrating that it is happening now in 2025.
Yeah.
So we're still questioning on why the fee is not being reduced, especially when we don't get the basic needs of, necessity inside the university. Yeah, so there are a lot of situations, a lot of frustrating realities happening inside the university compound that we always try to voice out.
Right. And through Liga Mahasiswa, you now have an avenue, or students now have an avenue to network with the other universities and share the different issues that are going on and champion what needs to perhaps be looked at and possibly even improved or changed.
Yes, I have one interesting story to share with you. So apart from Liga Mahasiswa Malaysia, I am also a national coordinator for Gerakan Perempuan Melawan, which is also a baby organisation.
Right.
So this
Okay,
is
Gerakan
Perempuan Melawan.
Okay.
So this is sort of the first female student movement.
Right.
Compared to Indonesia, because I went to Indonesia the other day to learn about student movement dynamics,
Yeah.
they have a lot of female student movements, student groups. In Malaysia, we don't have any. So I have started that, and now we have 80 to 90 members from different colleges, campus, be it private university or public university. So this network of solidarity among female students allow us to share the issues impacting female students inside our campus. And because of that, we realize that we share a lot of same problem. But now because we have a collective voice and we collect data inside our university, now our voice is, more solid, sort of.
Right. there seems to be a theme in what you champion. Liga Mahasiswa gave a voice to people who wanted an independent platform to be able to express themselves in the university. And then now with this new Gerakan
Perempuan Melawan.
Melawan, it gives female students, but in this case, not just female students in government universities, but across all higher education institutions in Malaysia to be able to share it. And do you actively look for avenues to help people who don't have a voice?
That's very interesting. Let me tell you the reality of Liga Mahasiswa Malaysia. We do not ask every member to be the front face. We appreciate that they have something that they could offer. Maybe they want to do their activism through their writings,
Right.
through videographic. They can do that. And whoever wants to be the front face, they can, be ready for whatever repercussion might face.
Right.
Can do that as well. So technically, in Liga Mahasiswa Malaysia, we also appreciate people who want to say something, but they are not, ready. I'm not saying that they are afraid, but I'd rather say they are not ready
Right.
to, put themselves up front.
Right.
And this rapid growth of memberships in Gerakan Perempuan Melawan and also Liga Mahasiswa Malaysia, the branches of our campus, shows that the students are aware of the issues. They know that there are a lot of wrongs in the issues, and they want to be a part of, fighting movements to fight for it.
Yeah. So, and now they have a platform to do that.
Yep.
One thing that has come up a lot, especially among this current generation, your generation actually, is the importance and the knowledge of mental health. In your experience, what are the most critical gaps in campus mental health and well-being support, and what should universities do to fill them? Is there a need?
Yeah, so basically, based on my reading, in every university, we have a counseling unit. But most of the students don't even know that it exists. We also believe that the counselors inside the university lack of trainings on how do they go down to students who need help.
Right.
On what way mechanism do they collect these students? Because most of these, most of affected students often try to stay away from the public.
Right. They hide.
Yeah, they hide
what
themselves.
they're going through.
Yeah. So how does university plays a role on reaching out to these students?
Right.
What sort of mechanism? And they're afraid that if they seek out, there's always this culture that we say in high school, don't go to counseling session because your stories will get spilled to everyone in the school.
Oh, that's a thing?
Yeah, that's a
Okay,
culture.
I'm unaware of this, but yeah.
But in universities, we're still having that, sort of stigma against the
Right.
counseling unit. So perhaps they need to be more student friendly. They need to be more, approaches more.
Right, to let the student body
Yes.
know that this service is available and that it is a safe and secure place for them to be able to seek help.
Yes.
Right.
And often, most of the time, students who are affected mentally, their academic, academic progress will get affected as well.
Right.
But universities has been applying more of a punitive approach
Oh.
to punish these students who are not able to commit to their education. So this is something that we might need to look back on, what sort of mechanism on how we tackle and handle these issues.
With institutional prestige, that's often tied to global rankings, how can universities, in your opinion, balance the, chasing that global ranking with focusing on teaching quality and student welfare at the same time, not just the academic ranking?
Yeah, do you know that actually the ranking, the world ranking, is based on the amount of publications produced by the university.
Right.
So this is where university, of course, at least in my experience, doesn't really care about the student welfare. What they do is they enlarge the quota for students to come in so that more students come in, more money can be produced towards that publication that ends up, affecting the ranking,
Right,
the world
right.
ranking. And this is a very sad reality, because what we want is university to not be just, a preparation for students to be a worker. It should be a compound that celebrate ideas, that, increase the student autonomy, And campus life should be something more than just what we have right now.
Yeah. How can universities and student organizations work together to ensure academic programs evolve in step with, industry needs, equip graduates with in-demand skills?
Yeah, it's very hard for us student movements to be in touch with university because we don't see the same objectives. For example, student movements view education from a human perspective, human lenses. But universities view education from a market lenses. So from these basic lenses that we view, the education is already different.
Yeah.
That is why it's very hard. We have always been trying to, sit down together with the university and tell them on, what we want, what we wish things to be like. But the university has not been very, very friendly and accepting us
Right.
in sort of way, at least based on my experience. Because maybe they are afraid of changes. But if we are still stagnant on where we are now,
Right.
how are we progressing towards, producing students that are more critical?
Right. Do you also face any pushback or resistance from your peers, from students, from other students?
Rarely.
Rarely.
Actually, students are more inspired and happy when there are a group of students that are ready to be the voices of them.
Right.
They have been very supportive.
Be the spearhead.
For example, in Liga Mahasiswa Malaysia University Malaya, we get supplied by information by the student. They seek help from Liga Mahasiswa. They try to raise the issue, not to the administration or universities, but to us. Because they think that, the problem or the issue should be raised by students.
Right.
And in that way, we sort of have a voice of demanding the universities to settle it.
Right.
Yeah.
They feel more comfortable coming to you because they feel you understand them better.
Yeah, definitely.
Wow. What are the issues that have come up?
For example, let's just say the accommodation. Because now, University Malaya at least has expanded the quota of students. But the accommodation that we have, the hostels, are insufficient.
Right.
So most students have to, try to find a place outside. And, inside Kuala Lumpur, the cost of living and cost of rent is extremely high for a student to afford. And these sort of issues is what they bring to us. Maybe it's more on the student welfare issues, the lacking of infrastructures, not having, the toilet is not working. More on that
Just day-to-day living.
day-to-day living.
Yeah.
Even that they come to us.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Those are basic needs actually, right?
Yeah.
And is there an avenue for you to make change when these issues are raised?
So technically, there always this perception that when we gather for a peaceful assembly or for a demonstration inside university, that is not the right way to voice things out. So we have always often tried to send a letter, negotiate with the administration. We have always been trying to do that. But when they have been constantly ignoring us on that, that is when we mobilize students to, demand for things.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So there's an elevation to things when it comes to getting things done.
Yeah.
With the next general election approaching, what role do you envision for student movements in shaping policy agendas and encouraging young people to vote? Would this be no, you've already voted once.
Yeah,
Is that right?
once.
You've already voted once.
Actually, twice.
Twice.
For the state election and also
Right.
the general
Okay.
election. Yeah. So basically, we have always, when we look back at the history of the glorious day of student movements, they have come out with their own manifesto. And they seek every political front, every party, every coalition to endorse their manifesto. And only then this party is, worth of a vote.
Okay.
Because these students will do their research on the grassroots level. What does the rakyat needs? They do their own research. They come up with a list of manifesto, and only parties who endorse their manifesto will, sort of get the support. And this is what we're trying to do, perhaps, in the general election.
Right.
Yeah. So we participated in a lot of public discussion.
Yeah.
Also, there's an initiative called Manifesto Rakyat. We're a part of that as well in discussing it. So from that, we collect data on what actually we need.
Right.
And that is when we demand whoever that wants to be the next government must actually follow what the rakyat needs.
Do you think you've established yourself as a voting bloc?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because with the recent amendment of voting age being lowered to 18, there are millions of new voters.
Right.
And these new voters now are being left hanging without education, without a proper education in high school, without a proper education in university. So the students are required to seek for themselves the knowledge of who are the political parties available in Malaysia, on, which party would worth a vote, on what kind of, criteria and how to vote and that sort of things. These are the things that student movements itself trying to advocate and reach out to our peers on
It's like they gave you the power, but not the education.
Exactly.
Not the skills to actually make an informed vote.
Yep. Unfortunately.
Did you find yourself in that situation when you were going to vote for the first time?
Yes.
Yeah.
I've actually had to done my own research because now the issue is the new voters are often influenced by what the family chooses. But that is not what a healthy democracy is. We want every citizen to know who they want to vote and what they need. And either that party that they voted will fulfill their demands. And we want the student being able to do that decision, that important decision for the nation. But this, privilege, or I'm not saying privilege, this right that is given to us is not being supplied with, the information and the education that we need to practice the right.
Looking ahead 5 years, what are your long-term goals for Liga Mahasiswa, and how do you plan to sustain and expand student activism beyond immediate policy wins?
So basically how I view is that with the constant rate of how Liga Mahasiswa has been doing its student activism and how we draw attention from other students who are now approaching us on how can I be a part of student activism, interestingly, I see that in the next 5 years, the student actually understand their power and the culture of student activism will bloom once again in Malaysia.
Right.
That is how we're trying to, going into that direction.
Right.
And back to the threefold principles that I have explained earlier, we want intellectualism to be freely exercised in university compound or even outside university compound. We want students to be aware of the social issues and fight for social justice.
Right.
And we want students' autonomy to be respected by all parties. Back to our principles.
Yeah. For students who are listening, like right now, watching this now, what advice would you give students nationwide who want to engage in social justice and intellectual activism but feel kind of intimidated by existing regulations? They see you, they're inspired, but what can they do?
Yeah, we never blame students who are not ready to, be part of student activism because this fear of, whatever laws that we have now often suppress students. And inside each universities has the right to make their own regulations. And most of the regulations trying to, control the student's voice. We're not denying that is the reality, and we totally understand students who are not ready. But the issue is that we need to challenge the status quo because the law has never been perfect. We need to, in order for us to change the law, a bad law, we need to challenge it first. And there's always this, worry that if I join this sort of things, it might affect my future. I might not get a job. Well, that is not true. This sort of narrative of trying to, or there might be heavy repercussions for your side. That is not true. And we're trying to advocate for that as well.
Right. It is a very big message. It is a lot to stand on. And you are definitely the right person to be the spearhead of this based on everything that you've said. We've come to the rapid fire question part of this interview, this discussion.
Yeah.
And like we tell all of our guests now, your answer at this point can change later on, but these are your thoughts and your answers at this point, right? All right. Which achievement this year makes you most proud? Think of one.
One, if two.
Okay.
The first one is that there's a student-led demonstration, Himpunan Rakyat Benci Rasuah 1.0. And because of that, now we are seeing that there will be an amendments on Peaceful Assembly Act. It all started from that student movement, student-led movement protest.
Definitely an achievement.
Yeah, so technically we could see that the law cannot be perfect.
Yeah.
And it is our responsibility sort of to challenge that
Right.
first. Second, proudest moment is that because I am spearheading two movements and I am seeing how rapid the growth of the movement, it's sort of something that is very content fulfilling.
Yeah.
Because you know that the students are always ready to be a part of, fighting for social justice. It's just that they don't have a platform. So this is also a call for anyone to actually start a student movement. It doesn't necessarily needs to be Liga Mahasiswa or Gerakan Perempuan Melawan. It could be anything.
Right. Which matters more right now, public funding or private support?
Public funding, 100%. We believe that education is a right.
Great. Study abroad or stay local? What do students choose more?
Most student wants to study abroad, but because of a lot of issues, financial, it could be access, it could be, scholarship issues, they stay local. But our local level of education is not bad as well.
Coffee, tea, or snack fuel for long meetings?
If you give me a buttercream latte, I will go for hours.
Alright. Most effective way to de-stress?
Oh, okay. So now I'm trying to practice this new thing where every week we need to go for a jogging or we play badminton.
Every week?
Every week.
Okay.
So this sort of my way now. I used to do journaling a lot back then. But now I think that with, me trying to shift to a new lifestyle, I think that there's a need to change that as well.
How many weeks has it been?
I think 3 to 4 weeks.
All right.
Yeah, we're still new. We're trying to get that.
Okay, what's Liga Mahasiswa's top priority for next year?
For next year, basically we want to branch this out to more university, and we're trying to make student understands of their power. And we want to, of course, focus on free education campaign.
Right.
Yeah.
Seems like you're well on your way to making your goals happen. Final question. All right. This is what we ask all of our guests. If you had the opportunity to make one change as Prime Minister of Malaysia for a day, what would it be and why? I think I know the answer already when it comes to funding for universities, but I'm going to ask you anyway. Okay, you're Prime Minister for a day. What do you do and why?
Of course, there's a lot that I could recommend. But when we're talking about from a student perspective, of course, free education, 100%. Although, the argument that we always receive is that Malaysia economically is not ready for it. But we have seen we have met and discussed with a lot of economic experts. And they say that it's actually not a problem. It is just that the lack of political will.
Right.
So if I could be, although I don't want to be, I really don't want to be. Yeah.
Well, I look forward to the day when you may run for office. In fact, it will be an interesting, if nothing else, it will be a very, very interesting campaign. Thank you so much, Hani, for joining us
No
today.
problem. Thank you so much.
Of course, with us today has been Hani, our Alyaah Hani Anuar, who is the National Coordinator for Liga Mahasiswa. And this has been another really eye-opening episode of Live Confessions. We'll see you in the next one.